So in this video, I just want to give you guys a little more guidance maybe on how to go about doing the homework for this week, which is coming up with some sort of graph that lays out some set of ideas you have about how the world works when it comes to frontline service robots or AI. All right, and so what we have here in front of us is the basic tool that we use for doing this. We usually have some outcome that we care about. This depicted on the y-axis that runs vertically. And then we have two places on the x-axis to represent our experimental conditions. So usually in here, the paradigm we work with is some sort of experiment where we put people into group A and group B and show those groups something different and then measure some outcome and see if those groups are different. So we might show in a sort of classic marketing A/B test, you might show someone one version of an ad and another version of an ad and see which one makes them want to buy the product more. Or maybe more specifically, makes them like the product more on a 7-point scale. So this is the idea, that we have an A version and a B version, and we think that one of those versions is different, is higher than the other most of the time on some dimension. So what we're going to do is have you just sketch something out. It doesn't necessarily have to be very formal. It can be in PowerPoint. It can be on a piece of notebook paper. We usually do this on the whiteboard or on the whiteboard walls in the Watt Center. But we're going to do it virtually this go around. And basically just the hardest part about it, I guess you would say, is just spend some time thinking about some phenomenon that you might find interesting. So maybe it's robot dolphins versus swimming dolphins. Maybe it's robots that agree with you versus robots that disagree with you. Maybe it's robots that are in the front of the class versus the back of the class. Maybe it's AI that's embodied like a robot or disembodied like a Siri. Maybe it's all sorts of things. Anything you can think of. Like some of the papers were paper made by or food that's made by a human or made by a robot, and this kind of thing. So usually somewhere along the bottom we'll have some kind of manipulation that's either a robot is absent or a robot is present, or maybe a human versus a robot, or maybe an AI versus a real person. Something where we're going to introduce some sort of technology into a frontline service space where it hasn't been before. Okay, and so typically, again, where your ideas come from are just sort of what you see in the world or what you read about online. A robot that's fuzzy versus a robot that's hard and plastic. So let's just say we want to do a robot that's fuzzy versus hard and plastic. All right, and so what we would do is we would go to create a graph like this, and we think about maybe what our DV is. A good place to start is just attitude, how much I like or dislike something. So 1 in this case would represent I dislike the robot, and 7 would represent I really like the robot. So let's just say we have a robot and we're going to go with our manipulation is going to be whether it's hard and plastic or fuzzy. So usually in the A group, or under this A here, that's usually our default. It might be the absence of something. It might be, if it's robot versus human, it might be a human because that's what's typical. If in this case it's plastic robot versus a fuzzy robot, plastic is usually what we see, so we might put that as the A condition. All right, and then you just want to write in, we'll just write in, so we have a plastic robot and we have a, for lack of a better word, we'll call it a fuzzy robot. All right, so those are our A and our Bs, and we have some idea that we've seen this as a thing, and we think, well, maybe that, maybe there's different situations where it's better or worse to be a fuzzy robot. One of the ones that we see typically where these have been used is in like healthcare or senior care. So maybe we could think about one context as being our sort of baseline context. We'll go up here to these dots over here as being, let's just say, what's a good way to think of it? Maybe something around the social service. Maybe the robot is providing some sort of social service, like or social therapy. So I want when it comes to social robots, I want them to be fuzzy. So maybe let's think, I'll back this out of here a little bit and think about where we would put these dots. So in general, if I'm in a situation where I want social therapy from something, do I want it, let's move this into the space. Do I want it to be, oh no, what did I do? There we go. Okay, so I got that sorted out. So let's just think about, we're getting the instance where I'm getting a social service of some kind. Do I want, what would it be, how happy am I going to be with a plastic robot? Well, let's just assume that maybe I'm not going to be that happy with a plastic robot. So maybe my satisfaction or attitude towards that robot when it's plastic is going to be pretty low, say in a 2. On the other hand, people, according to what I've read, seem to really like the fuzzy robots, so maybe that's going to be up here around a 6. And sometimes what we do is we draw lines in between these dots just to kind of demonstrate the effect that's going to happen. So I go from A to B, I'm going to like the robot more in the case of social therapy. But say it's some sort of medical service. All right. And I really hate my kid's keyboard. All right, so it's not a social therapy, but it's a medical therapy of some kind, whatever that looks like. So we do have robot surgeons. We have robots that roam in and out of hospital rooms, some sort of hospital type situation. Probably in that case, I'm less interested in having a fuzzy robot and might prefer the plastic robot. So maybe in that case, I would like the plastic robot more than I'm going to like the fuzzy robot. Just the idea of a fuzzy robot, roaming around a hospital, picking up all sorts of germs. Maybe it would look something like this. All right, so this is what our world looks like. This might be the case. So we would say, okay, well, if I'm a healthcare robot and I'm delivering some sort of social therapy, grief counseling, post-traumatic stress disorder counseling, something along those lines, then I am better off being a fuzzy robot than a hard plastic robot. On the other hand, if I'm a robot that's roaming around the hospital corridors and maybe doing some sort of medical type procedure or assisting medical professionals, staff who are more hospital-y, then maybe in that case I would like some sort of sanitary looking white plastic robot was better. And I don't really like the fuzzy ones. So that may be the case. That would be an interaction. So an interaction is a term that describes when some effect depends on the context in which that effect has. It interacts with another variable. So here the effect of fuzzy versus plastic depends on what context that robot is in. So if it's in a social context, social therapy context, the effect goes one way. If it's in a hospital context, the effect goes the other way. And maybe that's not the most interesting insight in the world, but we don't have to, we'll work on getting something super interesting. Right now, what I want you to do is just get practice kind of thinking through the way things work and representing those in this sort of framework. So that's kind of the tool that we're practicing using. And so for the homework this week, it doesn't necessarily have to be a ground-shaking insight, but it should be something that you can at least draw and explain on the paper. And if you have any questions, I've extended my online office hours on my youcanbookme website, which I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement about on the Canvas website. So, all right. Good luck.